You're live, John.
All right. Hello and welcome to Music, Philosophy, and More with your host, John Henry Sheridan, your super co host, Louis La Rocco, and our esteemed guest, Tommy Zadvydas.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Howdy, y'all.
So, we have to say a big thank you to our super patient listeners who hung in there because I did claim that this show would start at 9. But it wasn't without trying because we were here 8:40 with bells on. I might have been 1 minute late, but for 8:41, but we just couldn't get the audio to work on Google Meets, and now we switched to Zoom after a lot of uh, messing around, and Zoom fortunately works. So just for anyone who's doing live streams with two mics into a mixer at the moment, as of August 29th, 2020, Zoom is the stronger platform to do that on.
Yep. Zoom takes a stereo input, and
Right.
Google does not, which is very odd.
Mm-hmm.
But
Slow and steady wins the race. We got it. We got it going.
Yeah, we got it going. So it's time to dive in. So let me do a little bit of an introduction of my friend Tommy Zadvydas right here, and then we'll pick his brain a little bit. So Tommy is a friend for many years now, and he's a big fan of music, especially rock and metal. And he's also plays guitar. He could sing. He could write poetry and lyrics, and he is a writer of various types, creative and professionally. And he's here to just and is a Brooklyn boy, and he's a lover of New York City and history. So we're here to hear from him and take it one question at a time. Welcome, Tommy.
Thanks a lot. Just for the two old friends from the neighborhood that I've known for many years. Just really briefly myself. I've been a Brooklyn, New York native for since birth. From Marine Park, Brooklyn. It's a quiet little neighborhood near the Rockaways along the shore of Jamaica Bay. Big fan of music and art, and I found a lot of inspiration from these two fellas. Over many years.
oh, thank you.
Yeah. So on that note, Tommy, I saw a question that I put as number 16. He said, "Why don't you ask me that first?" And I think it'll be interesting. So Tommy, can you tell us a little bit about how you and I met, and then within that, how you and Lou met too?
How did I meet you? I met you lurking on the B2 bus circa 1995
Wow.
Wow.
Quentin Road, and going to met James Madison, going to high school, and like, who is this kid with the long hair and the chain? And were you rocking a leather jacket back then? I can't remember.
No, I didn't actually own a leather jacket until level 6 around 2003.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 4.
Just and like I would see you getting on the bus at the same place, or since you're behind me. So I was in 10th grade and you were in 9th grade. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like, oh, he must be one of those metal kids with the long hair. And we
Mhm.
eventually just like mutual friends, like people that we both know. Like Marine Park is a very close knit, small neighborhood, so a lot of people sort of cross paths. And I guess Lou, I think the first time I saw you was at Ace London. You guys were practicing. I think it was it Nystaria or Jack Frost? I think it was Nystaria actually.
Did
You were
we
jamming
rehearse
out
on
to
Quentin that time?
what's up?
I'm asking John if we rehearsed on Quentin that time. Oh, wait, you said Nystaria.
Yeah,
That was at Joe Fizz's house, I think, most
I
of the
don't know.
time.
It was the first time I saw you was at Ace London, and you were jamming to I think Lost Hope. I'm like,
this is post Mike Palmieri?
no, I think so. It's like 96 ish, 97.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time. 20 years.
Oh God. Yeah, we do this with everybody on the show, and every time it's like just as depressing. We're like, oh God, like this is numerous
It's been
decades.
a long time. It's too long.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then like, how did like our relationship kind of evolve? I think you went to Brooklyn College, Lou. I think you like when you had Jack Frost going with Justin, Mike Baker. Then I kind of started like lurking around the studio and going to the shows with you guys. And then John, went to Brooklyn College, and we kind of were like in the same circles. We knew a lot of the same people in the neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
And then how we really connected was level 6. And then we need some help with the press material,
street
writing,
team
what have you.
stuff.
Yeah, and then what was it that I think we talked about this story the other day? Oh, when I started taking guitar lessons circa 2003. Oh, why don't you come to a Halloween party I'm throwing? I show up at the party and he's like,
oh, no.
Kind of
3 sheets to the wind.
Yeah, like
maybe 4.
Yeah. Passed out in the other room.
Oh, man.
Just a little too inebriated.
Was that a level 6 Halloween party?
That was, I think the band was starting to get, you guys were starting that project.
Yeah, that was the very beginning. And that's when I basically just kind of got to know Tommy as a friend.
Yeah.
I remember.
It's so weird because it was always like, we always should have been friends for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We had always encountered each other. I'd seen you in the halls in Madison, and like we knew the same people. And we just didn't like kind of like two ships in the night.
Yeah,
the expression you might want to use. We did. I don't know. Just but when I look back on it, I kind of feel like we kind of clicked when we were meant to.
Yeah, right. Like just like our show tonight.
Yeah,
kind of started when it was meant to.
Yeah, exactly.
It seemed like it should have started earlier, but apparently not. Yeah. Yeah, right. I remember I wanted to ask you about that Halloween party just because I'm thinking about for my book, my autobiography, I want to put some of my not horror stories, but I want to I want to make sure it's not sugar coated. I want people to see also that I did I did go through some stuff without exaggerating anything, just to kind of tell the truth. So so I wasn't clear, 2003 or 4. You pretty sure that was 2003.
2003. I'm
okay,
pretty clear on that. But
cool.
the point being, these two fellows are long time associates, long time friends. It's a brotherhood. It's kind of how like I said, our area is a very close knit sort of community, and a lot of friendships that we have with a lot of people that stay strong for many years, which I guess is a blessing.
Yeah,
you don't really find that much, these days.
Agreed. Ever since I left the city, and I had mentioned this to John once or twice, I'm more in contact still with people from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess with a lot of events happening recently and stuff like that, there are even people that live like a couple of blocks from John, and he sees me more often.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Yeah, it's you never know how life is gonna bring you closer to certain people or less close to others at different times. Because I remember Lou was saying how he doesn't miss Brooklyn at all except for the people, and I understand what he means. But my memory was like, hey, I lived out of the country for a couple of years, and I had this feeling like, man, I miss everybody, and then I'd move back, and whatever I thought was here waiting for me was not. There were people, but it was just the energy was so the same. I was so evolved that I couldn't click in. Whatever world I thought I would return to was gone.
I mean, I have not left. I've been living in basically the same area my entire life. The neighborhood. The whole entire city has changed a lot. I would say, especially in the last 20 years. It's the demographics, the dynamics of the people. It changed, but New York is always like that. New York has been shifting like that for hundreds of years.
Yeah, but the amazing thing is when you have bonds with people that you don't see them for 5 years. Like there are some people you won't see them for 2 weeks, and you kind of feel like you haven't seen them in 2 weeks, and then there are others that you won't talk to for 6 years, but the second you talk again, it's almost as if nothing passed.
Oh, that was like you the other night. We were
Yeah.
planning this. We had this discussion. Like, how does this work? Oh, hey, what's going on? I haven't talked to you in 8 years. So like, oh, it felt like oh, I'd seen you yesterday.
Yeah, because there's that comfortability. Like you get to know
Yes.
somebody on such a level that it's kind of like,
Yeah.
we didn't really skip time. We just there were things, that we had to do, but then there are others that you realize the acquaintance that it actually is what I was about to say, acquaintanceship, or an acquaintance that you don't see them for 2 years and you kind of like you're trying to look for things to talk about because you don't have the same kind of bond.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So speaking of bonds, let's shout out to some of the people who joined the watch party. Hey, Chris Bonica, what's up? Thanks for joining. Tom Scuderi, thank you for joining. Deanna Giordano, thank you as always. So if you guys have any questions as we go, any insights, any comments on what we're talking about, please chime in. Tom Scuderi says, hi, John, Tommy, and Lewis.
Hello.
So I want to start us off on a super positive note, if that's okay.
Sure.
Lou looks a little nervous about that, but
we do
we'll
not
be
like
fine,
positivity here. I mean, look at Tommy's shirt.
Oh yeah, typo negative.
I had to wear this for the occasion.
When he came, I saw it when he came to the door. I laughed. I saw that.
There are none more negative.
Yeah, but I'm willing to talk about typo if you guys want. Anyway,
Get to that.
So this is a Buddhist quote that I just thought was pretty interesting, and it has to do with what we're talking about. It has to do with the spirit of dialogue, which is so in addition to having gratitude to one's parents, the Daishonin, the person who began this Buddhism, talks about the importance of showing courtesy and appreciation to others, saying, now this was written, this guy wrote this in the year 12, in the 1200s, in the 13th century. He says, treating one's friends with courtesy means that although one may encounter them 10 or 20 times in the course of a single day, one greets them courteously as though they had traveled 1,000 or 2,000 miles to see one, never showing them indifference. What do you guys think about that?
That actually kind of has some relevance to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, true.
Now I have to think of an inspirational quote to top that. One will come later, eventually.
We don't have to top each other at the time. We have to compliment each other.
Okay.
All right. So back to oh, cool. So Chris Bonica says, hey guys, I'm enjoying the history. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining. And if anything pops up, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more history coming up. That was just the tip of the iceberg.
That's very true. So, Tommy, what was it that got you into enjoying music in the first place?
Okay. I took notes for this. As I said, John gave me homework. Just reviewing my thoughts here. I guess, well, born, the end of the 70s. So I was an 80s kid growing up. Like Madonna, Michael Jackson, Cyndi Lauper. Like I remember all like the 80s pop tracks. As a child, like at being at like a cousin's christening and like hiding under the table as like a 3-year-old, and just like hearing those songs on the radio. And then like I remember I had a boombox that I used to tape songs off of when I was a little kid. And then so in terms of like the harder bands like Bon Jovi, that was a big band that like me and my cousins were into. I think that was the first tape I ever acquired was Slippery When Wet that I remember buying in the Sam Goody in Kings Plaza many years ago, 1987.
Really? You got it in 1987?
Yeah, I still have the tape, or 86,
Wow.
87, whenever it came out. Yeah.
Nice.
A friend of mine who lived childhood friend that long since moved away. His older brother was a Guns N' Roses fan, so I was kind of exposed. Like Welcome to the Jungle, Paradise City, Sweet Child of Mine. Another band, the band America, like Horse with No Name, the song You Could Do Magic. I used to sit and like dance in the kitchen when I was like 2-3 years old, hearing that on the radio. And then Yeah, one memory I have that's pretty strong about Guns N' Roses. It was the prom in 5th grade in the gym in PS 207.
Wow.
Which is like the local elementary school, and like dance, like being 10 years old, like okay, we're big kids now. We get to go to junior high school.
Wow.
Yeah, but then I guess the early '90s come in, and then you started to hear like this is the time of like grunge is coming in, so you hear Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. Like I was kind of tangentially aware of that stuff, but I wasn't really, didn't really like capture my attention. So, but you had a lot of like, I guess radio friendly hip hop I was into for a little while. Like, okay, like I'm gonna really embarrass myself, but Vanilla Ice. Or,
I could still sing Ice Ice. I could still sing a few. I think I will miss a lyric actually.
We all wanted
right,
to rock
stop.
the pompadour.
Collaborate and listen. Yeah, no, I could go there. Don't tempt me.
What about Snow? Did you listen to Snow?
Yeah, that too. Informer.
Yeah,
that song. Arrested Development. The song Tennessee.
That was cool.
Okay.
I listened to that recently. It's still got something.
Yeah, a lot of that like early '90s hip hop.
PM Dawn. That was kind of good vibe.
Paper Doll.
Yeah. Enigma. You guys are jogging my memory of things I didn't write down.
We listen to more than you think.
Poison. Double DeVoe.
Like Naughty by Nature.
And
then
OPP.
That or
yeah, you know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then how did my music? Yeah, continuing on now. I guess now we're in 95, 96. So then eventually you start to reach adolescence, and like the mischief comes in. Like, okay, start to do things you're not supposed to do. Let's go to the creek. Down onto the flat rocks, Garrison Creek, which is a remnant of an old was an old location of an old Indian burial ground. It's part of Marine Park. But back in those times, it was kind of just like a dump, burned out cars, and big concrete slabs. A really good place for teenage mischief, like Teenage Wasteland, and then these eerie songs. What are we listening to? Oh, this song, put on Welcome Home Sanitarium. What? I don't know what that is. Or the thing that should not be. Now, like this was Metallica, like Master of Puppets, and I was kind of. I actually did not get into this at first. It was too loud, too noisy. What are the bands? Like Pantera, Cemetery Gates, Cowboys from Hell. This was all 90s metal. And then what happened was I had a crush on a girl in high school, and she was kind of a punk rock chick, and I was like, oh gee, maybe I should get into the rock music so I could better relate to this person. And then I kind of didn't know that the first thing I went to was Metallica. So then I actually sat down and listened to Master of Puppets. Like that was the first album I bought at the Wiz. Circa 1997, and that was like, that's it. My world changed. Just I don't know, just to sit down and you listen to it carefully, and like just the raw power from the guitars and the lyrics, and James Hetfield screaming like a 23-year-old maniac, angry.
Yeah, interesting how Metallica was something that people readily listened to. The Master Puppets, Ride Lightning albums, readily listening to in the mid 90s, right?
Yeah,
it had nothing to do with being current.
Well, I mean, no, Loaded
people
come
just
out.
liked it.
Loaded come out around that time, and it was castigated. I do remember that people hated it, which is odd because they've aged. The tracks on Loaded, they've actually aged really well. Like I find myself like relating to them a lot more now. But like I'll even say like the first 5 albums, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, Justice for All, the Blackout. They can't be topped. It's such a a standard for like modern metal.
I think I think Load and Reload really got hit really bad because Metallica kind of was moving on from what they were so good at.
Right.
Like they weren't that much better of a rock band than others, they were that much better of a metal band than others. So it's kind of like, why are you leaving what you're
I always say,
good at?
I always say they should have released those tracks under a different name. They probably would have gotten a lot more. They would have been received much more positively by most people, because it's like they were turning away from the stuff that made them famous.
Yep, exactly. I mean, as far as the metal world, or if you even want to go as far as pop metal, I mean, they were the kings. Yeah. I mean, I personally liked Megadeth a little more, but as far as radio playability and everything, Metallica was just... And then when they abandoned that, it was kind of like, why are you doing this, guys?
Exactly.
They could have been the new AC/DC. No one would have cared, because it was still Metallica.
Right. So I have some comments here I want to let you guys know. So Chris Bonica says Load was pretty good. Yeah, I would put my comment about that. Load was pretty good. I'm not a big fan of it, but personally. But Tom Scuderi says, Tommy, do you like rock bands of the 1980s like Duran Duran, U2, REM, NXS, Tears for Fears?
I got into that a little later, when I was like a little older, because I started going to a lot of like goth new wave type of clubs when I was in college, and that's a lot of the stuff that they played, like The Cure, or like Susie and the Banshees, or like Duran Duran, Depeche Mode.
You do like bands, but later on.
And then what other bands I got into? I went to friend of ours, Mike Palmieri. Mike, what bands are good? And he gave me a whole list of, Faith No More, Guns N' Roses, Megadeth, and I kind of just went down the list and was buying a lot of buying records, buying CDs. I wanted to expose myself to as much. It kind of like really it really woke something up within me. And then what else? You had, this was like the late 90s, so you also had like a lot of the new metal bands were coming out, like the Zadvydas, Deftones, Korn, Cold Chamber. So I remember one time I had this was when like people started like internet chatting, AOL. So like girl I was chatting with, like, okay, what bands are good from like that were playing at Ozfest that year, like 97, 98. So she'd give me a whole list of like Limp Bizkit, Cold Chamber, all those like new metal bands that were kind of popular in like the late 90s. So I kind of like I delved into that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, Cold Chamber. That
reminds
me of Boiler Room. I thought of Boiler Room the other day.
Yeah, they were the same genre, same
Trapped.
Yeah, right?
Same time frame.
Yeah.
Can't remember at all what they sound like. Did either of you guys listen to Candiria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Brooklyn hardcore. And while we're on the subject of like local Brooklyn bands, I mean Type of Negative. That was like.
When did you first get into Typo?
I would like probably late 90s, like 96. Somebody from the neighborhood had it in their room, and I remember seeing it. Black number one. Everyone always played that on the guitar all the time. And then you always knew when Pete was out practicing at the studio on Clinton Road, the Beast.
Yeah, the black car.
Those were some times. I feel like we're really, really fortunate because I remember learning of those guys on 104.3, not even from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they were easily in my top 10 even before I realized that they were from Brooklyn.
They had such a signature sound, and they were just great songwriters.
Nobody ever sounded like them, still doesn't.
No.
Yeah, similar. I remember liking Typo, and then like getting that bonus, like they're a Brooklyn band, like, oh great, there's a chance we could actually run into them. Oh, cool.
So it was like them, Life of Agony, what else? Biohazard's another local band that kind of got very big.
Yeah. So Tommy, it's fair to say you started listening to music kind of seriously around the age of 17?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting time. So how would you describe the influence that music has had on your life?
Go to my list here. I would say gave me a very strong sense of belonging, because I wasn't I wasn't into, I had an older brother who was very much into like house and techno music, and it didn't really click with me. Um, but it's kind of like that was the subculture I was able to like declare my allegiance to. And then yeah, I mean, just sense of belonging. Like metalheads, rockers, we're all like, it's a community. We're very opinionated, very passionate about our bands. Yeah, and yeah, it helped me develop a career later on, which we'll talk about probably, because that's sort of how I, got into journalism, was writing about music. So it did have a role. It would not be a stretch to say it helped me like work out my destiny or help my life path unfold.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just you go to like going to concerts. Like it's very life affirming. I guess the first show I was ever at, like a Metallica concert, 1998. It was the tour, one of the tour for Reload, and going to shows at like Roseland, Hammerstein Ballroom, small places, CBGBs, or like Lemoore, the second stage of it. Just like the power, like when you're at a rock concert with like a couple hundred people or thousands of people that are like just into the music, just as you are. Yeah, it's very yeah, it's life affirming.
So let me just chime in there for a second. You reminded me of something.
Yeah.
Well, first off, shout out to to Josh Salant. He joined a while ago. If you're still there, Josh, hey, what's going on? Also, I was thinking, thinking about going to shows at Lemoore's or Roseland, any place really. The excitement was palpable, and sometimes it was like kind of a weird energy. I didn't like it, but it was still very much an experience. And do you remember, like, of course you guys do, but going to a show and the experience was about what you were going to see, the people there, the friends you may be with who are trying to meet there or something, and nobody was on their phone.
Yep.
Because there wasn't any.
I just was thinking.
Or, I mean, it existed, but it was just nothing. You were really in that scene, and you cared about what other people thought, and there was a lot you cared about human beings that have flesh in front of you.
One of the craziest concerts I was ever at, it was the first time I was at Roseland. I went to see Hull, Courtney Love's band. Yeah, it was pretty wild. Wow. I did not expect 15-year-old girls to go, like, just first time in a mosh pit was at that show. It was pretty wild. It was so unexpected. Yeah, what are the bands that wrote, like Fear Factory, which was like a really
visceral.
What would you call Fear Factory, Lou? How would you describe them?
Oh man, Fear Factory. I remember every day me and Mike used to walk home from high school, and I'd stop off at Mike's apartment, and we'd listen to Fear Factory. We'd crank it, yeah. And that they were like second to us from Pantera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, they had a way of playing, man. I mean, just that sound.
Yeah, I had seen them that was the third show I saw at Roseland. Actually, yeah.
I saw them at Roseland too. It was very violent.
very intense.
Yeah, I didn't like it at all. So Tom Scuderi says, what are your favorite all-time concerts that you see live? So before we go into that, let's maybe put that on the back burner, because I imagine that'll just come up naturally. Yeah. But unless from that era of clubs and, if something jumps out at you.
Actually, there's one show. It was a Type O Negative show. They played two shows. It was the 2003. One was at Hammerstein Ballroom, and they played about a month and a half later at Lemoore, which was it was so overpowering, powerful. Just a powerful performance by both bands, and their music seemed to gel very well together. That was the other thing I thought that was really cool. Type O Negative and Lacuna Coil, which is a metal band from Milan. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think what albums by them. Coma Lies, Lou, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I was listening to them from early in high school.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name of the first single that hit because my brother was starting to get into European metal at that time, and he got one of those Century Media sampling discs.
Yeah, that's the label they were on. Yeah.
Oh, what was the first single? And I mean, I'm not taking credit for discovering them or anything because I certainly didn't introduce all of New York to Lacuna Coil. But
no.
I remember at the time, like Justin and everybody else have never heard of them. And I started bringing the disc to their house. And I was like, you got to hear this song. I was like, they're really good.
Yeah,
they were really
can't
good,
remember who I first heard about. Might have been from you, Lou, but I never got into them. They're on the periphery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if there was one concert that really like sticks out in my mind, that's one of them. Tool, that's another band that I was seeing live. That was like a very, like, it was almost a religious experience because they have a lot of like, esoteric symbolism, artwork by the Alex Gray, who does a lot of like, art that like encapsulates or tries to display like transpersonal psychology or transpersonal, like the nature of reality, and like you're seeing this imagery and the songs being played, and like it was a very visceral experience. So that's like another show that jumps out at me, that like sticks out.
Cool. Shout out to Dave Swinzicki. Yeah, he's joined the watch party. What's going on, Dave?
What's going on, Dave?
I could think of one of my shows that stand out. I did see Typo Negative the first time in Long Island, Nassau Coliseum.
So the Nassau Coliseum,
97, I think.
Okay.
And that was really something cool. And then at the end, it started snowing when they played Frozen, and it ended like that. I was like, really, I really was like taken by that. That was before, drinking. So it was a sober concert. So I remember experiencing it pretty well, I guess. My first girlfriend was there, a few friends. Do you remember being there, Lou? I don't know.
It doesn't sound familiar.
No.
I'm not sure.
I think we would tell me this. Did we go to Nassau Coliseum to see Black Sabbath, Pantera, and Corrosion Conformity?
We did see that. And we also went to Nassau Coliseum for another concert that I have the DVD of in my living room, which was Dave Matthews Band.
I don't think. And then I went to one Dave Matthews show with you, but I never saw him there.
Are you sure?
I don't know if we went together or we just met there. We saw him at Giant Stadium, I think it was. And there's like a crazy thunder and lightning
he said
storm
let it
at the
rain,
end.
and then all of a sudden it started storming.
Yeah, I saw the point.
Yeah, they were.
That was like a religious experience.
I feel like they were the best live group I've ever seen in my life.
Power music, boys.
And it's hard to beat. But the funny thing is, my first concert ever was Willie Nelson.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I wish I saw that.
Yeah, my buddy Melvin, his brother took us, and it was in Coney Island.
Wait, hold on a second. I went to a concert with Melvin and his brother and you in Coney Island earlier.
Wait, was that the same night?
Might have been. It was. I can't remember who it was. It was some sort of like band shell performance. It was more like a Southern rock type of thing. I don't remember it being Willie Nelson.
And I ended up standing up at one point and realizing somebody was stuffing grass in the back of my pants.
Yeah, I think I was there with you. I'm pretty sure. Did we drink under the boardwalk or something?
Yes.
It got really sandy.
Yes, that was my first concert.
Miller High
ever.
Life or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Of course, it was Miller High Life.
Oh, jeez.
Under the boardwalk. I can't.
Oh man, romantic with the urine smell and everything. Chris Bonica says, "Heaven's a Lie." Who's that?
That's Lacuna Coil.
Yes.
That's one of their singles. Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, I wanted to mention that before too. So the first song I've ever heard from them was called "Falling Again." From
okay, yeah, I know that track.
I found it in a reverie.
Yeah, that's there's another song. "This Is My Dream." It's called. I think it's on their first EP.
To Myself I Turned.
No, is that what it's called? I don't know. I have to look.
The female singer, right?
Yes, it's Christina Scott.
Well, they had two, but she was the one. I ended up getting pictures with the male singer once. He was in Duffy's in downtown Brooklyn.
How really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I harassed him. I gave him a band CD.
So that's why you're starting to learn Italian now to impress him.
No, that's so that I could just move to Europe eventually. Go back to where my ancestors are from.
Yeah,
But-
like somebody from the old country.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I've never even seen, where my relatives are from. So, for me, it's just kind of like, wow, if I can get a dual citizenship and I can go visit and maybe I can eventually live like that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. You'll definitely get visits from us if you're in Italy.
So I won't get visits from you guys if I'm not. What is that?
Right, that sounded like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you go there,
You'll meet me near the Mediterranean.
right?
Worldwide plague notwithstanding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to. Speaking of roots, I would love to spend a season living in Norway, and I definitely want to learn how to speak Norwegian before I die. It's a bucket list thing.
Yeah, I got an app I could send you that'll help you like it's fun, and you'll learn it because it's kind of like a game, but it's
Speaking of
really
other
effective.
European bands,
I'm open to it.
Nightwish. That's another one.
Yes.
That's another. It's same label, Century Media.
Mm-hmm.
The very operatic type of
Mm-hmm.
I think the singer's Norwegian or Finnish. That's what she is.
How did we not mention Moonspell?
Right.
I always thought of them as a typo knockoff, so I never really liked them. Yeah.
Oh, they were a lot different though.
Yeah,
I liked them a lot.
They're different.
Mhm.
Portugal, right?
Yeah. Yeah, great band. They had some really unique sounding stuff.
I saw them 2018 in live in forget the name of it, opening up for Amorphous.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you used to be a gigantic Amorphous fan. I remember that.
Yeah.
You and
Whack.
Darish
Duac.
also and Duac, yeah. Yeah.
Irish eventually became a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. I
Right.
never saw that coming.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we listened to him a lot together, and then we played in the blues band together, and he just got into it. Yeah, Amorphous, I still enjoy them a lot. Seeing him, that show was really great. But
Actually,
yeah,
like
it's
shows
not
that
the same.
shows that I found very moving. Another one is I had the chance to see Alice in Chains in it was 2013 in New Jersey, but it was the first time because that was always one band. I guess the tone of their music it is very dark and miserable, but like there's one the track Nutshell or the
Yeah.
album Dirt, or like certain songs of Facelift, like the what We Die Young. It's blanking. What's the third track, Lou? Bleed the Freak. That's it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Please stand for me.
Yeah. Just the harmonies between Cantrell and Lane Staley.
We don't have music artists that feel what they write the way we did back then.
No, absolutely not. I mean, they must exist, but they're just underground, and
Right.
without really searching.
I can also say because I did a lot of traveling in the last couple of years, and I had the chance to go to Seattle and Portland. It's definitely something in the air, like in that part of the country, that they captured because I had the chance to go see some local shows in both places, and like the vibe is the same. So it's like I don't know, it's like they're bearing something of the spirit of like the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
Right. When you're there, you
definitely.
could feel it in the air.
Yeah,
kind of.
you can. But yeah, that like just to see. I never had the chance to see them with Lane Staley because he was out of the band by like 1996. I do remember the day that, like, they found him. Like, it just because it was like 2003 ish. And like I was very into their music by that point, and like one of the great singers, one of the great frontmen of like the early mid 90s, and taken down by some really bad habits. But still,
So he was already way long out of the band by the time he died.
Right? Yeah, he was kind of like living as a recluse by that point. And just like
Well, he was sick for a long time, and they never said anything about it.
Right.
And then he was a recluse as well. So supposedly, from what the story went, was that they hadn't heard from him for weeks, but occasionally he'd pop back in, until finally he didn't pop back in.
Right.
And then they went to check on him, and he had been passed for quite a while by the time they found him.
He expired. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when he would go see them, he was just hanging out. He wasn't in the band anymore.
No, he was still in it, I think, but they really weren't playing a lot because they all knew he was sick.
Right. They did record one track in like 1998. That song, what was that track? You might know. That was like getting a lot of radio play in the time.
Let me see.
Born Again. Get Born Again.
So that was.
Do you remember that song?
No. It's coming up though.
Yeah.
Get Born Again. Sat Suffering. I Knew Him When. Fair Weather Friends of Mine. Oh.
Yeah.
His lyrics were really.
They were deep. They were dark and deep, and they were recording, and there was like talk that they might reunite at that point, but it didn't happen. But they found Robert Duvall, the new singer, who's kind of like he fits with their sound currently.
Yeah, I mean he fits better. He fits decently more so because Cantrell was such a heavy influence, because Staley and Cantrell were constantly harmonizing on things. Yes. So I think I don't know if he sounds like Cantrell as. I mean, he sounds as much like Laney, Staley.
Right.
Oh my God, as much as they can pair well.
Right. My point being, he's a good fit for them now, and I had the chance to go see them, and it was a very just a very powerful experience because it was a band that really it when I started to really figure myself out as a person, that was one band I was very, very into, and I had the chance finally to see them live.
That must have been cool.
It was cool. It was.
Yeah, Jar of Flies definitely had an influence on me, a major
one. So shout out to John Holtz. How you doing, John? He says, I can't see nothing. LMAO. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Is that a song or something? Or
I don't know.
Maybe you just can't see.
I don't know anything. That was a different group. If that's what he's referring to.
I'm not sure, John, if you just actually can't see us for some reason. Anyway, so one other great concert. I actually had the wonderful privilege to see Halloween 3 times in my life.
Wow.
And the third,
I always loved their logo.
Oh yeah,
the evil pumpkin.
And I the last time I saw them, it was 2018, also like a week after Amorphous, and or before, whatever. And I was with Jeremy, and it had the original lineup plus the new lineup. They combined. It's called Pumpkins United.
That's cool.
So Michael Kiske, the original awesome, singer. All 3 singers that ever sang in the band were there.
That's incredible.
and I don't know about not all the guitarists, but 3 of the guitarists were there.
That's
on stage
incredible. Like all the people that played.
I guess they all got along pretty well, huh?
Yeah, it was such a good vibe, man. Yeah, the lead singers knew how to split the set, and I'm sure they were really relieved to have each other in a way, because Halloween songs are so high that to take a break for a song to rest your throat, let someone else do the screaming high notes, that must have been cool. Yeah, man, the guys, their voices are still awesome. And one of the guitarists for Halloween who came back, actually the original singer too, was named Kai Hansen. My son is named Kai, so it's that was the first time I heard the male name Kai from Halloween. Anywho, so another question for you, Tommy.
Shoot.
How has music, if this is too similar to the other question, we'll move on. How has music affected your relationship with the world at large?
No, I sat and thought about this one too. Yeah, it helped me launch a career. That's definitely a big one. And just helped me find, self-acceptance, place to belong in the world. And then I actually one it's kind of related to how music affected me, but my place in the world. I was very big into Hole, and then some certain other female-fronted bands like Garbage, Shirley Hansen, who I had actually the chance to see at the King's Theater about 2 years ago, which was kind of really cool.
Oh.
I like to tap into your guess your inner feminine is like what I like to say, like the sensitive side. If you're, um,
I don't
okay,
think Hole or Garbage are too sensitive though, are they?
no, not really, but like, but I think like I don't know, both those bands they really moved me, but like most stereotypically, like okay, it's a girls' band. Why would you find a lot of
Yeah, Hole is surprising to me. Yeah,
yeah, that, but
I did like Garbage.
yeah, but those were and that what I was a big Tori Amos fan. That was another artist I
I'm a
got
fan of hers. Yeah.
I got into, but like kind of it was a way to like embrace the more like sensitive side of myself. But yeah, I would my relationship with the world, it just kind of helped me be more self-accepted in the world. Because I was kind of like, you know, I was a shy kid growing up. I kind of had physical issues as a child, so I was kind of like ostracized a bit by like a lot of people. So I had to grapple with a lot of like alienation, feelings of like not belonging, and it kind of gave me a place to, sort of just to find self acceptance.
Yeah, I think a lot of metalheads, especially, depending on the band, right? But we're generally freaks, right? Yeah. So to be a freak amongst freaks, you don't feel too freakish anymore. No. Then you start to realize, oh, being normal isn't so bad.
No.
Yeah.
Man, I don't want to be a freak anymore.
Cool. But the older you get, you kind of wonder to yourself, like, what exactly is a freak?
Oh, yeah. That's true.
If not
that's
all
true.
of us.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, Lou.
Thank
you. So, Tommy, can you tell us a little bit about how your experience with music journalism and maybe how Level 6 played into that?
Okay, you're going ahead. But what happened was, I did not know what I wanted to do for a career for a very long time. I was very confused about. It's funny you asked this because I was grappling with this question today earlier this afternoon, but it kind of helps to review how I ended up like where I am. Yeah, I didn't know what happened was I was in a speech class the last term in Brooklyn College, and we had to choose it was a public speaking course, and we had to choose what just to pick something to inform the class about. And I was like, I want to do something about music, about metal. And then somebody, I forget how the idea came to me, but like, yeah, I decided to do a song analysis, and I decided to do an analysis of Fade to Black, Metallica. So then I told the whole story behind like what's they were recording Ride the were they recording Ride the Lightning, or they were touring in Europe and like they had all their gear stolen, and James Hetfield went into like this black depression, and that's kind of what inspired. So then I had taken some music theory classes, so I talked about like the inspiration for the lyrics, and then like the actual chord progressions and what chords they were using, and like how the clean guitar picking, and then you're switching to the distortion, and that's kind of how like the idea of trying to do something professionally with music started. And then like, okay, I want to try to be a music journalist. That was the scheme that I had. To then, all right, I had a very like inspirational journalism teacher, and I said, this is what I want to do. I was like, all right, well, do it. Yeah. An old Italian fellow from the Bronx, and he started his journalism career as a copy boy, I think, at the New York Post in the 1960s. But he kind of came from like our background in a way.
So you were able to relate with him.
And like, the idea was, if you got a dream, then run after it, go for it. So I started taking journalism courses, and then I was preparing to go to graduate school for journalism, and that's kind of when, I guess you guys were starting with Level 6, and you guys needed a. You had to have written content for your press material, so that's how I got enlisted. And then at the same time, like when I started doing my graduate work, I was doing I started writing about other local bands, So the band called Inborn, which is kind of like heavy, another female fronted band, gothic rock, and then like the band called Silent Fate that was like very influenced by, I guess, like Faith No More, Alice in Chains, um, Just One Chance. That was another like I think it was like Andrew Girton.
Yeah,
Was
Chris
Chris Bonica
was
in the
there.
band
Yep.
too?
Yeah,
I forget. A bunch of like people that we knew. Yeah, another group called After Dark. You guys. So it's kind of like I had a musical community of like local
you had
musicians to
plenty of
be
test
around.
subjects.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also really good as a writer to be around like a bunch of artists and performers. And then at the time, I had done a profile in one of my courses about CBGBs, the whole history of like how it was a New York like institution, and I had written about like the growth of punk rock and like Debbie Harry, and I think that was one of the moments in my life where I was like truly cool. I had managed to get an interview with Hilly Crystal. He had died like a year later when the club was sold, but like he remembered stuff like talking about like Dee Ramone playing, or the Ramones playing, or them not being able to play, but yet making music anyway. But he didn't remember like 2 days ago when I scheduled the interview.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was such a trip, man.
How do you feel everything's changed?
About what? How so?
Like just the scene in New York.
Um, what's interesting, you see a lot of like independent musicians now because there are so many more platforms. First of all, everybody's migrated to Brooklyn. It's gone to like it was Williamsburg, then it was Bushwick, now it's out in Queens and like Ridgewood.
Mm-hmm.
That's one interesting thing, how like it's migrated out of the city. But I guess now there's so many like independent performers that have their own platforms to get their music out,
Right.
which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely has. It's funny. Like on the surface, it seems like there's not much of a music scene at all over there. But I do a lot of mastering
I've
work,
been
and it's
around.
there.
It does exist. I've been around. I've seen shows.
So, I'm sorry, I'm listening the whole time. I'm just a little trying to figure out the puzzle of, yeah, Lou, we had this issue one more time that somebody was joining and it's saying it's private, they can't watch.
Really?
But yeah, I don't know if it's on my end, but this is a friend of mine, so I don't know. My other friends are joining, so I didn't specifically block anybody.
Okay, I always set it so that everybody can watch, but I don't understand why it keeps doing this. I'll drop the YouTube link in your on your page.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be an easier way to go a lot of the time because everybody can watch YouTube, but for some reason Facebook, like I think what's happening is because it's coming from my personal one and it's not coming from the public page.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's the real obstacle, but the program that I use doesn't allow me to do it from the public page if I multi-stream.
Mm-hmm.
So I could put it on my public one, but then I can't do Twitch and Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube at the same time. So it kind of like plays this little game with me.
Mm-hmm. And your private pages has those settings, default settings to.
I opened it up the last time, but yeah, like Facebook seems to have a lot of the same options in like 100 different spots. So it's very difficult to kind of change everything. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Here, I'm gonna.
Yeah, sorry guys. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for those who were trying to watch, and yeah, this is doing this interview series has been for me. It's I look back and as I'm going through all my archives, my old bands, I realize it's very similar to just starting a rock band because you have no idea how raw you're going to sound in the early phases. And I didn't want to deal with those growing pains again, but I know that the only way I'm going to get really good is by just going through these unexpected things that nobody wants to volunteer for. So And I, you know, this is no way around it. In other words, so I feel like we're in like high school rock band again, just like figuring things out as we go. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is still new terrain, and these social media companies, like, they change settings constantly, and they're constantly evolving, adding features, taking features away. So it's always kind of like the Wild West, when you're running the steps through this stuff. You know.
Yeah. hmm But anyway, we're still making it happen. And let me go find that thing you just put there. Okay, so where did we leave off, Tommy?
Actually, you're talking about my music writing career. I
Right.
actually did
Mhm.
have the opportunity to write about, like, I ended up in financial reporting, covering merger, like, heavy, like, corporate development initiatives at two news services, and two of the stories that I did one story each at each company. About one was about Chrysalis Records in like 2008. It was the label that had signed Blondie, which was like, which was why it had captured my attention. Like, why because I remember the name of the record company from when I was doing the CBGB's assignment. So it was kind of like about um sort of how the music industry had changed, because by that point it was like the old music business was like, it was dying. So like either record companies had to adapt. I think in this case it was like they, their catalog was still valuable, and they were trying to get sold to like one of the larger. I forget, it was a long time ago. And then the second story I did at my current job, it was kind of about um, it was a company that I think Canada. I think it was in Quebec. I forget what. I don't remember exactly where, but it was a company that did. They used artificial intelligence technology to do like with the mastering process, to assist
Mm-hmm.
with like the mixing and mastering. So it's kind of like how you know new technologies were being applied to, like, sound engineering. And but my whole thing was like, okay, wow, it's a music company, music story. Um, yeah, so it helped me get a career off the ground, is how I would describe it. I did not become a writer at like Rolling Stone, like the kid in Almost Famous, as was my dream. Um, but I kind of how I explained it to a lot of people was like, okay, like shooting an arrow and like hoping it lands somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, we can relate to that.
Yeah.
All right. So sorry I was distracted. So was that the interview with Hilly Crystal
Yeah.
from CBGB's? That was like your kind of your entryway into music writing?
Yeah, that was the first time I mean, it was a class assignment, but like I had to do reporting, so I had to, like, I was in the club like for like 2 months straight, like every weekend. And I had to book the interview. I booked this guy Kip Curry, who was a promoter at the time in New York. Um, and he had known a lot of like the people in the '70s, so like he was giving me a lot of like feedback about like how the scene was back on the Bowery in those days.
Mm.
Um, but I remember like it was just like this is an assignment for a journalism degree. Like, this is fun.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember my master's. Technically, it was a master's thesis, but it was a long form magazine article. So I had to write. Basically, it was a profile of three bands and how they were adapting to like the new music. How the industry was changing from like, okay, you would get signed to a record deal, and then now it was like, okay, you get your tracks distributed digitally. How does the distribution model shake out for musicians now? How do they get paid for it? I guess like charting all those changes. And I
Mhm.
actually, yeah, one of the articles I did for as part of my coursework was what was a level 6 show at Orleans Grocery.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it was funny because we had to like what they tell you in magazine writing is like do a it's called like draw a reader in. So I think that month it was like I had a subscription to Rolling Stone and it was the anniversary of the Ed Sullivan show and the Beatles performance, which was like that was a watershed moment. So then I compared like that moment to like, okay, here's a band in 2004 New York, the Lower East Side.
Mm-hmm.
Jump on stage, they hammer out a set for their faithful, and then I use that. It's like that. They say that's like the nut graph. That's how you draw a reader in to a story. But yeah, like how did that's how I found my legs as a journalist, was through that work.
I think I remember you wrote articles on more than one show, but I remember the first one being Orleans.
Yeah. That one. I did some work, like freelance work for like other bands. I was at this club Pianos. I was covering bands at for a little while. Trouble was I never got paid for a lot of the work, so it wasn't like worth my time.
Welcome to the music industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
The only industry where they tell you to do it because you love it.
Yeah. being an artist, it takes cojones. It does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't imagine how to be on the music journalism side and how to leverage your energy to get paid well for that. I can't imagine how that works, but
right.
Must work for some people.
I've always wondered though too, like, and I guess you're a good person to ask. How exactly does that work? Do you get hired full time by a company, or do you get paid per contribution when you do articles?
It's very. I'm in the journalism industry. It's very much my views are my own. Let me just preface that by saying, but like just from, the industry has transformed. I guess in the last 5 or 10 years, like very. Now it's like a lot of the content, like the influence is on digital content more so, not so much like, okay, we're gonna write a paper, it's gonna for a magazine, it's gonna come out every month, or a paper that comes out every week. It's the news cycles, it's real time nowadays.
Right. I'm sure there are different deals. Some people are on salary, but it looks like, especially when you look into the world of journalism, and it's like they use the term contributor a lot.
Right.
That's
basically like a
sounds
freelance
like it's
position.
hired. That's
yeah. When they say that, that's usually like a freelance type of position. Like there are like, I remember I was trying to get an internship at a Billboard for a while, because I think, okay, my degree was in sort of in business writing, so, and that was one route I was encouraged to try to take.
Right.
If you could cover the financial end of things. Yeah, but I like the just the publishing industry it's changed drastically in the last 5 or 10 years. I guess for me, I had the good fortune of having business and financial training.
Right.
So people want to read the things that, if you have knowledge in that industry, people want to read like how best to invest money or where the deals happen. Like in the case of the mastering company I wrote about. It was like they were a new startup. They were looking for like investment capital. It's like, okay, here is this like new way of new technology being applied to an old, an older art form, as it were.
Yeah,
and then it has like the cachet of like, okay, it's a they have connections with artists. It's a music mastering platform, or whatever. It's connected to the entertainment industry.
So just to chime in here, got a comment from Chris Bonica, who says, "Love you guys. Sorry, but I have to cut out. Tommy would love to have you on Camarilla Cafe."
Yeah.
Plug in the cafe, Camarilla Cafe. Yeah, I'm still wondering about why some people can't join and some can, but whatever. No point in crying over spilt latte.
Yeah.
Oh Oh my God.
or spilt almond milk.
I would cry over spilt latte though. I love a latte.
Yeah. Yeah, just trying to get my mind clear. So, Tommy, my apologies for any lack of focus on my part. Um, yeah, so that was a mastering service,
Yeah,
electronic mastering service. What
yeah.
year was that about? Because
This was about a year and a half ago.
okay, I was going to say that sounds like new stuff.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be 2004
No, this was
or
recent.
five or anything.
No, this was recent. This was like
Okay.
I was just happy because I was able to write like the whole reason I got into journalism. I could actually do it in my professional life.
Yeah, because that's coming out. I've
Yeah.
seen these
Yeah.
companies. I've used one time.
Okay. How do you find services like that just as a musician?
Oh, well, I'm a CD Baby member.
Okay.
I that's my distributor, CD Baby, and
Okay.
they have all sorts of cool offers.
Okay.
One of the few.
How do you think the music industry has changed in the last, let's say, 10 years?
10 years.
That you've been active as an artist? Let's say since like
Mhm.
early 2000s to now.
Well, um, I really think it's changed. Uh, it was a tale of two cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah, 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 that's right.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's really the best it's ever been for being a fair playing field.
Yeah.
Even though it's really not fair, but it it is. There's potential to get your music to a wide audience, which I really love. That I could see the stats of who's listening to my music in Brazil, who's listening to my music in South Africa, and there are people that listen in various countries because I have a distributor that's global, CD Baby, and many distributors can do that.
Uh-huh.
But financially, I definitely can't pay my bills through my own music, and I don't put the effort into tour. I don't put the effort into sell merchandise or anything. So
Right.
it's no surprise. But at the same time, I'm having, as an artist, it's satisfying to know that I have a reach, and that if I put in effort, I can reach more people. So without having to hire people, without having to sign my life away. So I am completely happy with the way it's going.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the traditional music industry of the record labels and that sort of the ones who offer the deals and sign people's sign sign people's life away or whatever you want to say. I think that's gotten even more and more disgusting,
Right.
and kind of cutthroat in the sense that I was teaching about music, pop music and stuff. And when I started teaching 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, I felt okay. 90s, I started to feel a little weird. 2000s get queasy. And then 2010s, teaching about anything in the mainstream was just lowered my vibe big time.
Yeah.
Just almost nothing redeeming. And I mean, like, poisonous. Like,
You mean like teaching people songs to play, like actually to perform them?
No, I mean, musicians in the artists, really entertainers. They're not really, they're entertainers more than anything else.
Okay.
In the mainstream right now, if you go and find the videos that have millions of views that are like current, they're all just like, in my opinion, designed to kind of dumb people down and distract people and basically kind of destroy young people's brain. I mean, I'm not talking about like Slayer or Fear Factory. You lose brain cells by headbanging or devil worshipping stuff.
Talking about pop culture,
right? But no, I'm talking about like
a crowd surf.
I didn't hear the song. I just heard about it. I forget her name, but someone put out a song about.
I did read some article not a few years ago. It was kind of like it was talking about like the actual structure of like a modern pop song. Like take something from like the 1960s versus something of like from now, like the actual construction melodically, and then like the beats and purple. It's like it is a more simplistic. It's not as complex.
Yeah, kind of brain dead. There's I think I don't want to go too far off the deep end, but Billie Eilish, does she have a song about not Quaaludes, some sort of drug or something like that? If you could check out Lil real quick, what some of her recent hits. One of them sounds like some drug that she's kind of inadvertently promoting to young people to do.
See, I'm gonna look it up right now.
And I saw her in person when I went to I think an ASCAP expo. I didn't know about her. She's young, so impressionable. I don't want to badmouth her, but I don't think it's her. I think the people who have deals and who are, once they've signed their life away, the machine owns them. And it's kind of like, you're now my puppet, and you have to keep, dumbing down the masses. I mean, it's shocking, some of the stuff. What's her name? Cardi B. If you watch some of that stuff,
man,
I would never let my son see that.
I mean, now you're getting into conspiracy type stuff, but I mean, but on that note, it does make logical sense. I mean, once you reach the gatekeepers that are powerful enough for you to get that platform, they're going to make sure you're on their team. Because if they see someone that might spread a message they don't want you to spread, they're not going to invest in you. That's why they were even talking about it out loud. I mean, this was more of, I guess, damage control. But remember in the late 90s, they were talking about like the rock bands that companies were going to hire going forward, that they specifically weren't going to look for people who acted like Guns N' Roses because they didn't want to deal with the headache. Like they were discussing just the professionalism of a lot of the acts and how much it weighed on them, how much it cost them when somebody didn't want to take the stage. It would start riots sometimes. So they would publicly start discussing like professionalism in music.
The Guns N' Roses and Metallica concert in 1992 when the
right.
What was it,
yeah. Well, that's certainly understandable.
Yeah.
To not want to work with people who are.
Right, but that's the start of them saying, you know what, your talent isn't the first thing we're looking for now.
Right.
So now we're going to have to start narrowing kind of like, aspects of what we see as worth an investment in.
Got it. Did you guys find, like, as musicians yourselves, did you, like, dealing with that machine, as it were, what was your experience kind of, like, trying to enter that world?
Oh, it started immediately. It started immediately. We were told, play things really fast and but start kind of bracketing it because, and I mean, it makes sense. If you're going to put an album out, it's got to have continuity, Like even bands like Faith No More and stuff like that, as eclectic as their career music was, each album kind of had its own style and it changed per album. The Beatles did it that way. Soundgarden did it that way. But, the second we started talking to a producer, it started. It was kind of like, well, could you do more at that pace? Could you do more that kind of do this, do that? And little by little, you start seeing kind of like the dynamic control going down.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was my observation. I don't know if John would agree with that completely, but I do remember specifically that we were going to start producing stuff that was a little more similar to each other than what we had already had. And it wasn't exactly our group decision, to say, hey, we want to write everything that sounds like Love Is a Myth. Like, no, it was guided in that direction. But I don't think we went far enough to really get the real machine treatment. We just saw it from the outskirts,
Yeah, I think we got out early enough, meaning the band ended early enough that we didn't get sort of trapped in the machine. Yeah. But I saw the machine opening its robotic arms out to embrace us towards the end,
opening its maw.
Yeah, I did because we were, there was like a potential management contracts we were looking at and stuff, and personally glad I never signed anything like that because, oh God.
Yeah, we would have been locked in, and if you don't listen, you get shelved. Because I know plenty of people who did get record deals and they got shelved because they didn't do what the company wanted them to do. And a lot of Peter Steele's story was very much because I'm kind of locked in with a lot of the family, so I knew a lot of things outside of you know, what they were releasing in the press and stuff like that. But a lot of it had to do with the company wanting certain things and them not wanting certain things. But yeah, real quick, John. So I looked up the songs. I don't know if you're thinking of Cardi B's song, WAP, which I can't believe they put that out with that title.
What is the controversy with that? Someone educate me on this.
I mean, it's an abbreviation. The song's not called WAP, but you know what it is, right?
No, I don't know. I heard about it and how ridiculous it is.
Wet, ASSPUS, and you could finish the rest right there. That's what that stands for, and that's our pop hit.
Okay.
So, but the Billie Eilish songs were Ocean Eyes, which was her first one.
Mm-hmm.
Then When the Party's Over. All the Good Girls Go to Hell. It's nice.
See, she's a young girl who you know is getting tons of attention, and she's singing stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there's recently been. I mean, if you look up like YouTube compilations of a lot of the recent pop stars, there have been satanic scenes in almost every single.
Yikes!
Every single one of their videos across. That's what I'm saying. You're really getting into Camarilla territory right now.
But and a lot of these young people are dying. These artists, they're going off the deep end. We've lost a lot. A lot of names I don't really know, but I've seen videos about how many have died, and it's despicable. What other Billie Eilish songs?
So the other two that she had were "Bury a Friend," and her biggest hit was "Bad Guy."
Bad Guy.
I'm the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Duh.
Oh, maybe it wasn't the name of the song. Maybe it was in the song about what's a common drug people are taking these days.
There are a few.
Yeah,
it's tough to. I mean,
but anyway, she's kind of like saying that if you got to medicate, that's what you got to do, type of thing. It's like. This is secondhand. I didn't listen to the song myself, but hearing her other titles, I wouldn't be surprised. Not to put her down. I hope she just wakes up, and gets herself out of this, cage.
No, you're right. There are no positive themed pop culture people right now. Every single thing is some type of, it's on the dark end, or it's about sex, or it's about, and it's not. Written from a distance, kind of like weaved into the lyrics, where it's like you really got to read it to look into what they're talking about. No, they say it right at you.
Yeah, it's hideous. That's the band Fun. The song Tonight.
Yeah,
we are young, so we set the world on fire. Yeah, so if it's young, you're gonna set the world on fire.
I mean,
right in what the hell? I know it. Okay, I know. I don't want to sound like an old fogey, but the whole video is like them.
I mean, Megadeth had a whole album set the world afire.
Furniture, but they didn't make it on popular radio,
right?
And they didn't have a handsome guy singing, making you feel like this is like a respectable person who are
Dave
children are
was a
supposed
maniac.
to copy.
We know that.
Yeah, he's a maniac singing a crazy song. We get it. And he's, if you like him. You kind of like them on purpose to piss people off, but
hello me.
But some of these pop things are like, or like Imagine Dragons, Radioactive. Like that's supposed to be cool. The Welcome to the New World, the new Radioactive world. That's cool. No, that's bad.
Yeah, I know what you
toxic.
Mean. Like when we were growing up, we were going against the grain, or at least we thought we were, and the music wasn't allowed on the radio, and people called it Satan music. But
that's true.
But now Lady Gaga can literally make a video with devil horns, and.
But that's not original. I mean, Slayer was doing that.
Right. Yes, but what John's saying is it's catapulted to the masses, and it's it's influencing the popular culture. When Slayer was not allowed, it was Beavis and Butthead was the closest to pop culture they allowed any of those bands. Yeah, and they really made you look like an idiot. I mean, Beavis and Butthead, it's representative of us.
It's not wrong. I had that. I was watching an old episode of that yesterday, and it was like it's such a for the zeitgeist.
It certainly wasn't glorified to be a metalhead in the 80s and 90s. It's kind of like look at that metalhead over there.
Yeah, he beats up frogs or something like that.
Beats up frogs.
Yeah, that was
Frog
the thing.
baseball.
Like frog baseball.
Really?
In
That was one
Beavis
of the
and Butthead.
episodes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Terrible.
I never even heard about that.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
it's-
it was pretty lowbrow stuff. There's no doubt, Beavis and Butthead. But I liked it when I was a kid.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't want to
that's
go on
really-
a rant about, but actually you did ask me, and no, I think it's got to crash hard. It's got to crash hard, the music business, and it's going to grab, like, that's why 360 deals started, because
Yeah.
labels couldn't generate money anymore the way they used to because of the changing industry. So they started saying, okay, instead of just making back money from record sales, since they're on a record sales, we're going to make a little bit of money on every single thing that you do. And then it's so hard for artists to make a living. I mean, I guess it always has been on some level for anyone who's not top tier, but even top tier have trouble now. Yeah, and like I'm telling you, man, I got sick trying to find a good pop song from the 2010s to teach to young people. It just made me sick, and there are a lot more that bring me down.
Yeah, it's dark. It's dark. I think they really started that. They really weaned that into pop culture, starting with Madonna.
Really
But Madonna was still kind of undercover. Well, with like a prayer. I remember the day I finally realized what that was about. I was like, whoa, okay. I never thought of it that way, and it is kind of like I mean, I'm still not a religious person, but I don't know. The last few years, I've kind of like looked at the way people like kind of mock religion and the churches, and I'm kind of like, well, is that really necessary? Like, do we need to do that all the time? And I think it started with her because it was provocative, and that's when they started that kind of like popular provocateur attitude that now we're going to go against the grain and we're going to be dirty about it. And we're going to, everybody's going to be cool who does this. And then it just kept getting worse.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I recently watched the Korn video, Freak on a Leash. You could say it's well done art or whatever, but about the bullet, like avoiding everything, clever, I guess, but no. The lyrics in that are no good either. If that's what he experienced, fine. But that's not good to pump into kids' heads. And when you make that like the number one or top 10 song, I know you maybe like that song. I don't know, but
I did it at the time, but I could kind of see now. I guess that I'm older, like where you come from. Yeah,
like
I'm a Korn fan.
Yeah, I know you are. Then, or not to speak ill of the Dead or anything, but what's the band? The huge band Linkin Park, right?
Yeah.
No, none of that music. I actually worried about them when they were alive and when he was alive and they were going strong. I was like, how could you sing those words night after night? It's so dark, crawling in my skin or that. And then what's that song? That
in the end doesn't
in
really
the
matter.
end, it doesn't really matter. What the hell? You're gonna sing that night after night, and that. Look, if you write that song, in the end, it doesn't really matter. And if it's from your heart, not designed by the industry to make millions of dollars and make kids desperate and extort as much money as you can from them, and if you actually really you feel that way and you write that song, good. And then someone hears it, fine, you express yourself. But to take it and then to manipulate it and then to try to like extort as much money as possible out of people from this theme of telling them that nothing matters in the end, like all your efforts are fruitless and useless. And I mean, and then these guys have to sing that. And so many of their songs are like that. And it sounds cool until you realize that it doesn't stand for anything.
Well,
nothing.
I think the big issue that's hitting you is just the fact that we're inundated in it. Not necessarily that it exists, because you always need that kind of stuff to kind of make you feel like you have a companion when you feel that way. So it does serve its purpose, and it's good for existing. But yes, on a really, really heavy level, like I just spent the last couple of years really hyper analyzing a lot of Disney stuff, and I've hated some of the things I've seen on Disney. like it's not funny anymore. That I have two little girls watching it, and it's like this just isn't very nice. Like by the time they realize what they've been watching, it's almost like they're they're ingraining it into people.
That's a conversation for the other program.
Sure. Well, I would say just a real brief note about Disney. The worst thing that Disney did, in my opinion, besides glorifying materialism, is sell the myth of happily ever after. Like once you get the girl or once you get the guy, then things go smoothly.
I used to say that years ago.
And in India, because it stands out as a great contrast. They still have arranged marriages, and in other parts of the world too. And when I learned about that, when I went to India, I was like, had to adjust, like thinking like that's kind of backwards. I have that mentality. And then I learned about it. I spoke to many people there. And the idea is that Americans or the Western world, we have it wrong in the sense that we believe that once you get the girl or get the guy, then like the work is, you sort of like achieve something and then you can relax. But in India, it's like when the marriage starts, then you got to start working really hard to make it work.
To keep it
together. Because no matter who your partner is, you could either make it work or not. It's up to what you choose, how you choose to approach it. Yeah. And that's a much different mentality. And that's why the divorce rate is much higher in Western countries that have this sort of false idea of romantic love being the primary thing rather than hard work and commitment, and respect.
Yeah, staying together is, and I don't want to get flack from people who are going to hear me say this because it's the truth, but that is the tough part. But that's the tough part with anything, I don't want to sound like a jerk, but if you have the same guitar for too many years, you want to play another guitar, and if you have the same computer for too many years,
I would assume like being in a band is kind of like a multi-dynamic relationship.
Yes,
in a sense.
And it gets hard, and you have to kind of keep everything together. Maintaining is always the toughest part. But we've become as a culture, like we've become a culture of trade-in. Like there's no downside. If you get a divorce lawyer, you just do it again. Where your car starts giving you problems, just bring it back. Trade it in. Like everything
if your arteries block, you just get triple bypass surgery, then you do it again.
And then just keep eating cheeseburgers. It's we've turned into a very like instant gratification, trade in, swap out kind of culture where, you can always get something new. New's the best. So it's bad. But when you got to deal with the same person, like I'm not saying it from the guise of like, oh, I'd like to get a trade in. I'm sure she'd love a trade in. But you gotta keep, people evolve. You sometimes grow away from each other. You sometimes grow together. That's really the tough part, is maintaining that union.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And also the other word that pops to mind is cancel culture. That's another thing we're living in, right? If you don't like what I'm saying, or I don't like what you're saying, you're canceled, bro.
Yeah.
Right. Like we saw that with Roseanne. Not like I'm going to stick up for her. I want to get down that rabbit hole, but that's a example. But just in general, like everyone's so sensitive and.
Yeah.
You're either right or you're wrong. It's like, well, can I have an opinion that's kind of somewhere in the middle?
Yeah. I think it's going to start to go away soon. So if that's of any good, if it makes you feel any better, I have a feeling it's kind of dwindling.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think we've learned from the quantity of stupidity.
Right.
Just a real off the beaten track, Tommy, any thoughts on the loss of the awesome actor, the Black Panther actor?
I was actually really shocked because I liked the movie and I had no idea the guy was ill for such a long period. Apparently he shot the Avengers film, and then there was one other movie. I get the Captain America. There was 2 other movies he was in, and he still he's doing it with like stage 3.
Wow.
Colon cancer. And like, no, I liked Black Panther because it was like, I found it to be like a very mythic story. Like, okay, the young man, he's like, he claims his heritage, and he kind of like he's a representative of the land that he lives on, and he kind of has to take, you know, um, yeah, their wisdom out into the world. That's kind of I thought that it was like it was a strong mythically archetypal story. I thought.
Yeah. Did you hear about that, Lou?
Yeah. When I looked on YouTube today, I'd realized that a few people on set that I had worked with him, and they all said he was genuinely a really really nice guy, and they didn't mention whether they knew it was coming or not. But I mean, obviously, he was just at the level of stardom that he was at. He could have said something, and he didn't. So, I mean, that in and of itself is respectable,
Yeah.
So yeah, but they said he was a great guy to work with, and everybody seemed to be pretty sad about it.
Chadwick Boseman, right? That's his name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I never heard of him before Black Panther, and the second I met him through that movie, I was like, wow, it was a memorable experience. Like his character, like I almost feel like I knew him because of how strong his acting came across.
Right.
Yeah, it was very refreshing when I saw him. Like, man, they really got to. This is the guy. Has to be Black Panther. The movie would be so different without that quality of acting. He brought his personality into it. I felt like his person, his humanity. So I was genuinely sad when I saw that. Not too often. That doesn't happen too often with celebrities.
Yeah.
To me.
It yeah, I've always gotten accused of that. Like when Dimebag Darrell, Chris Cornell. I don't create attachments with people I've never met. I save that for when the people I do know generally go.
Yeah, right.
Like, oh man,
yeah. I was a little surprised that Chris Cornell's death didn't hit you harder than it did, but I mean, of course, it makes sense. It's just a guy in the distance, really.
Well, it's sad that I mean, his music has definitely influenced my playing, my writing, my my whole entire musical adventure. He's one of the reasons I even considered singing. He's one of the reasons I played guitar. So it's very very
I remember,
big thing.
Well, you did tell Lonnie that your range is actually his range actually Lou's range exceeds that of Chris Cornell.
Exceeds. I'm at like 5 octaves.
Wow. No, but how's the saying go? When an artist that you admire or influenced by passes, like part of you goes too, in a sense. Like, okay.
Yeah.
To an extent. I mean,
yeah.
I've turned. I'm not gonna say I've turned into a cold person, but
you're not cold.
I'm more concerned about the people I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's when it affects me big time. But if I've never met somebody before, or realistically they would never know whether I existed or not, it just kind of, I'm very even keeled about it. But it was sad. I mean, I was still listening to him.
Mm-hmm.
I still do. But I mean, all his new stuff I was constantly following. But shit happens.
Mm-hmm.
Cold as it sounds.
Him too. I know he gets kind of like lumped together a little bit with Bennington, right? Chester Bennington.
Well, they were kind of attached at that time when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of theory behind what actually happened.
Yeah, right.
And they were both working on a documentary, and they were both working on a child trafficking thing.
Oh yeah, bringing that to the light. Yeah, I vaguely remember hearing about that.
Yeah, it was called the Chris and Vicky Foundation, and they had created the foundation for all types of human trafficking research. So, and the story with Bennington was that he had a lot of problems when he was younger in life. It was like a family uncle or something like that. So then the two of them kind of bonded over that and started working towards something. And then they had hit a giant batch of information that they weren't supposed to have had, apparently. And then the rest is up for debate. But there were a lot of people that were like saying, like, at that moment in Cornell's life, he was not suicidal at all.
Who knows, man?
It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's rough to consider. But I did feel though that him too, not to the level of Linkin Park, but when I listen to Soundgarden, I know you guys like Soundgarden more than I do, but I always felt it was pretty dark. You know, it's
Oh, it
kind
was
of like
immensely dark.
deceptively dark.
It was very
To
dark.
sound like Jesus Christ pose and stuff. It's nothing nothing too friendly there, nothing too happy. I mean, everyone seemed to think he was a great guy, and that's the vibe I get when I ever see his interview or
He took
anything.
a
But
major turn though. Like I have a poster for the last album he put out on my wall right now, and his last album was called Higher Truth. So
oh, yeah.
he had taken a way, I mean, like a 180 after Audio Slave.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And even toward the end of Audio Slave, Be Yourself. That's all
Mm-hmm.
you can do.
Right,
So
right, yeah.
he had some. He started going very positive. I don't know if he was born again or anything like that, but he definitely changed his whole thing after that.
Mm-hmm. But he was still playing with Soundgarden, right, towards the end there. So I'm like, to go out and he was in 40s, I guess, and to be singing those songs and
He was in his 50s.
50s, yeah, and you have to like put your soul into it, and you're leaving your family wherever they are, and that can't feel good, you know.
Yeah.
Especially if he knows if he was experiencing higher truth and everything, and then he has to go out and that's only it's for money or contractual stuff. You know, it can't be because he really really wants to. I mean, I imagine.
Well, his
It's not,
career, he seemed to have never stopped at any point because
yeah,
he was
right,
putting
which
out
is,
solo stuff after Soundgarden, and then Audio Slave, and then after Audio Slave, he was back to his solo stuff, and then he got back with Soundgarden. He was in Temple of the Dog. I mean, his career never stopped for a second. It was just constant.
I see. All right, so jump back to Mr. Tommy here. Thank you for allowing us to veer hither and thither. So can you tell us what aspect of your life philosophy helps you to recover from setbacks?
This is the philosophy portion of the
Yeah,
program.
we've officially entered the philosophy portion.
Well, I'm a big yeah, I guess we found the segue. I'm a big believer in like the power of myth. So like I guess being aware of the myth that you live. Okay, so like you take like all the stories that you see in from different cultures like around the world, and like okay, the one like kind of a superficial explanation. This is how people would explain when the crops would grow, how the seasons turned. But other writers and thinkers like they depict like this is like Joseph Campbell. If you're familiar with his writing, it kind of gets into this line of thinking. Like okay, they depict like universal human truths or universal human experiences. So like if you could find like when the myth that you live when you go into a painful experience or like trying to like what is the mythic character that you embody in life, that's kind of something that I believe in very much. Like okay, full disclosure, I'm a practicing pagan. Like I'm into pagan religion. Like so nature worship is a big thing, so like being aware of like natural cycles of like the earth and like the flow of the seasons, and like strange coincidences, pay attention to these things. Like there was a concept that comes from like Anglo-Saxon mythology, which is like the web of weird, right? Like the web of existence. Like even like a modern way of thinking about this would be like if in physics you talk about like string theory. So like how people would read omens, or like when they would get messages about foreboding of like certain events, like a flight of a certain bird or a comet would pass over the earth, and that would foretell like the death of a king. Like being aware of like signs in nature is like a thing that humans were in touch with a lot more in the past, not so much now because we're very we're a more materialistic society now. So yeah, what my philosophy, like just reading, stay rooted in nature, and like learn to read like the book of the world around you in that deeper sense, and then just stay educated, like read different publications, read different source material on like a lot of different topics. Those are my philosophies of life.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Um, so, okay, are there any setbacks you'd feel comfortable to share in which music has helped you to pull through?
Yeah, I have a few. I mean, well, generally, I could be somewhat of a melancholic soul sometimes. So, yeah, whatever you want to call it, melancholia. That was like the Victorian term for it. Maybe like low grade depression. I'm just a moody, moody son of a bitch. Yeah, just like, yeah, like, all right, I'm not feeling so great. I'm gonna go put on Jar of Flies or Dirt,
Great
rock out.
albums.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, that's one aspect. Just listen, music can help soothe the soul, or like, all right, I want to feel like. One of my favorite tracks is it's a Queen song, "Princess of the Universe." It's the soundtrack to the Highlander films, which is like the story of an immortal Scotsman who he's killed in battle in the Highlands of Scotland and find out he's immortal, but now he's in this like headhunting game. Other immortals are gonna try to kill him, but it's about like, I guess the story is like the immortal nature of all humans in a sense. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that's like an inspiring track. Um, yeah, I think yeah, okay, so as I said before, I was a practicing pagan. I was in a Wiccan coven like a few years, well, now 2007 ish, that had broken up like, really suddenly. I mean, it was like being in a band. Like when you're in a like a spiritual group like that, it's like you develop very deep relationships with people. It was like a surrogate family in a certain sense, and like, you know, I was listening to Life of Agony, like Soul Searching Sun, a lot that summer when I was going through like a really bad grieving process. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, yeah, I just that was one thing that like helped like heal my heart. And then like again, I had a situation in May, like 2 years ago. Some like yeah, someone I had dated briefly from like several years back that I kind of was trying to maintain a friendship with, and she kind of was like, "Listen, I don't want any contact with you, or whatever." I had tickets to go see an Alice in Chains show like that night, and that was kind of one thing that helped me get past the thing, or help me start getting past,
Mm-hmm.
like start the grieving process.
Right.
You know, Screaming my head off,
Hmm.
hearing "We Die Young" or a Junkhead. Or yeah, yeah. So those are three examples of how music has helped me.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hmm. Um, so on the philosophy bit, Lou, anything you want to chime in with in terms of how the myths kind of color our lives, or the value of myths? I know you delved into that a bit on your own, I'm sure.
Oh man. Um yeah, I've dug into that a lot. I mean, recently, and one thing that I have been planning actually with my own show is to really go into just the human history of this, like all the way back as far as we can go, and see the amounts of times that each group of people were influenced by a particular myth in comparison
Yeah.
to now. I feel like a lot of people born in the last like 40, 50 years may not have a sense of how mythologically driven the human race has
Oh,
been.
absolutely. That's absolutely true. Like,
Mm-hmm.
We're more detached now than we've ever been, but we've
yes,
gone thousands and thousands
yes.
of years.
I
I
mean,
mean,
like mythic patterns, they come from very deep. There's a psychologist Carl Jung. Carl Jung. He
yep.
like he talks about the archetypes, which are like these inherited psychic structures. Like there are different figures that you see in mythology, so like all over the world, like the wise old man. You think of like Gandalf, like the Lord of the Rings, like the
Mm-hmm.
wise, or Merlin, or like the great mother, like the mother goddess. Like there's always a figure like that. It's kind of like these are patterns that are inherited, like in the
Like
almost like the
like
DNA of
blueprints,
humanity.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it
that's
is.
kind of and
It,
that's kind of like where you get the ideas of like deity, like gods and goddesses, like how a particular archetype is given a charge and like a ritual or like a rite. It's worshipped. Yeah.
And we've been we've run society based off of these things. I mean, I'm not gonna say what I think at the exact moment, because obviously I'm gonna this is gonna be something I'm gonna dig into.
It kind of, I mean, I'm speaking like I was a history major in college. Like, it kind of started in you could kind of pinpoint it around like the 1600s ish, like when we started developing like materialistic thinking.
Oh, you mean like the way current society has gotten to now started from
yes.
Okay.
Like,
I thought you
basically putting like, okay, the reality is what you see in front of you with your eyes and your senses, rather than, you know, like dreams or you know, visions or what have you. You know, more like there's greater stress placed upon like the physical senses or the physical world.
Right.
Well, science, right, that emerged at that time.
That's the obvious that's in front of you, I guess, for someone who's not looking anywhere else, you know. But I mean, outside of the last 50 years, humanity's based themselves off of mythology and off of you know, outer thinking. And just these last few years, especially the past 50, I mean, humanity's become something that doesn't even resemble its old self almost overnight.
Yeah.
So, you know, but again, it's difficult when you live in modern society, because, I mean, obviously this is all that I know, and I would imagine for you two, outside of the same thing for you guys, outside of searching for that on your own, this is the only thing we know.
Yeah.
So, you know, to people back then, we'd look odd.
We would so look odd.
But then again, we're the odd ones, and we don't even realize it.
It's funny when though I remember like certain stories, accounts of like when the Native Americans, like when Europeans or like Americans were coming and like colonizing, like when they were coming across the Atlantic Ocean, or like when they were you know, spreading out west, like a lot of there's one, you white folk, you people are mad, you're always chasing. Like, they had like this compulsion for physical things, which was like very odd to them. Like, they didn't live in harmony with nature.
Right.
Yeah, and even now, you know, the rush to do things, the older I get, the more I don't understand it. Like, what are we racing towards? Like, it doesn't, you know, if somebody knows where we're going, it's certainly not me. It's kind of like, you know, have 2 jobs, have 3 jobs, have 7 jobs, keep going, keep going, keep going. Like, where are we going? You know, it doesn't, the whole mentality to just keep making more money and keep, you know, detaching yourself from, you know, nature. And I've only the last few years, I mean, growing up, I spent a lot of summers in Pennsylvania. So, and I hated it because it was just mosquitoes and frogs and, you know, I'm not going to insult Pennsylvania, but there's nothing majestic about it. It's flat land, some of the Delaware Water Gap, you know, and mosquitoes. But the last few years being so cut off from the concrete jungle, you know, going to Salt Lake City, going back to the mountainous areas, like when we went to Weed, California and stuff like that, I don't know why people would want to be detached from that.
Yeah. No, I actually did. I was camping in Utah a couple of years ago. Just as you described, a lot of mountainous terrain in like a nestled valley. Like, why would you want to come to the? And then you come. What is it? How large is Manhattan? It's like 11 miles or 20 miles, 20 square, whatever it is. Like 8 million people on this tiny little island,
and it becomes all you know.
Yeah,
it becomes, you know, I have a lot of go back and forth arguments with my father all the time about like traveling and where different things look, and you know, his job used to send him around to different conventions to talk about different topics, and he used to tell me all the time, because I said one of the dreams I had of being in a band that traveled was because I want to travel.
Yeah,
and he used to say everywhere looks the same. I was like, you went to every major city, you got in a plane, you maybe, if you were under the clouds for a bit, saw some country, you went to a convention and you went to the same thing, just in a different location. You went to every major city, but you didn't see any of the actual continent.
Yeah.
And I think some of that came from an argument about whether Bigfoot existed or not. He's like, oh, we would have found it. I said, did you ever go driving through Wyoming? You tell me if you're going to find that thing in there. Like trees and miles of just mountain and trees. And
no, I remember I had
still plenty of places.
I had to go on one like moving moment in my life. I had to go on a business trip to San Francisco, and I think I remember being on the plane, just looking out, and then like feeling like, oh, there were people used to have to get in wagons or ride horses and trek out across this land, thousands of miles,
with no Rite Aids or Walgreens.
No,
yeah, and they led more peaceful lives. I mean, I'm sure that would have been more stress. Like you kind of think about that, like you got to hunt for your own food at night, or you got to grow stuff, or
you might be hunted, attacked by Indians, or Native Americans.
But at the same time, it's hard to see, why we can't not emotionally strain ourselves on the stress that we're given now. Yeah. Like you got to answer those emails. Like, where were you last night? I was trying to call you, even though you already worked 10 hours. It's like, why am I so stressed out? Why are we like this? Why do we do this to each other? Like we shouldn't have this urgency with every single thing, but we do.
Yes.
And it's not like we're going to another planet. I mean, we're working on that, but the emails we do day to day certainly aren't.
Right. And if we're bringing that culture to the other planet, then we might as well just stay here anyway.
Just leave it here. Yeah. Well, why bring it there? I mean, it's so, I don't know. Maybe we should go back to myths.
Well, I think there's value in definitely taking time to think mythologically. I watched some video. This woman, this author, Caroline Myss, Myss,
okay,
and she said some interesting points. That she's mentioned that if you take the myth of Prometheus, right, who gave the fire to humanity, right?
Yes.
And
stole it from the gods and gave it to human beings. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then, we could see that. And then she kind of, I don't exactly know how the connection was. She brought that up. And then she mentioned how once we got the atomic bomb in the 40s and we decided to play around with it and let's see what happens when we drop it.
Let's see what happens.
Then what actually, when she really put it that way, I realized that we are living in the trauma of a post-atomic world. If that bomb was never dropped, our neuroses and the way our anxiety,
it's funny because
would never be to this level.
And it's what do they call the family unit, the nuclear family?
Yeah.
And that's a new thing.
That's
families used to be much larger.
That's a post World War II concept.
Well, here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
The further back you go with archaeology and the deeper they keep learning stuff, we might be living in multiple post-traumas. Not just the recent ones we've done, not just the one we might see coming eventually, but this may have happened numerous times.
Yeah.
We didn't realize how there was a field of blue glass on the sand in Egypt. We had no clue what it was until the Manhattan Project. What happens to sand and nuclear fusion at the same time? It creates a blue glass. We had no clue what that was. And then once the Manhattan Project happened and we knew what it looked like, everyone started looking at Egypt and going, wow, there's a nice big area of that just in the middle of the desert that at one point was a rainforest. So could have happened a number of times.
And then she also mentions how after the war, it all became about who has the fire, who has the bomb, who has the power. And then this this, deers putting their horns up, bucks, this male energy, all saying, as long as we have the power, we're safe because we could blow up the other guys, or the standoff attitude, and then of course she explains that the pace of life just accelerated after the bomb in the 40s.
It continues. It's
continued. Yeah, and it's just never stopped. So it became faster and faster and faster. You know, and that she basically explains that bomb was the Pandora's box. If you go to myth again, right? Mythology, it's like this beautiful box that, you know, there's amazing things in here. But if you open it, you never know what you'll unleash, and you can't put it back. So once we opened the box of the atomic bomb, a whole lot of other horrors and just chaos and unexpected or unwanted things came. It became a lot more complex, our reality.
Yeah.
You know, and then I was just interviewing my mom yesterday just to record some of her life experience and go back into her relatives in Norway. And I didn't realize it fully until yesterday that her life and my family's life is a product of is a post-war life, right? Because my grandmother lived in Nazi-occupied Norway, yeah, and she had, you know, Polish prisoner camp down the block and smuggling food. So and her mother died when she was 16, and she became the mother figure of 5 children. Of course, her father was off at sea for like years at a time, and then my grandmother's first boyfriend, or I don't know, most heart connected boyfriend, died in plane maneuvers. So, and then she ran away to America, and then she started her life here. And my mom was raised as a single child and without a father, because the father here didn't work out at a time when divorcing was rare. Sorry, Mom, if I'm saying all this. You didn't want it to be known, but no. But this
it's funny you said.
But
this.
That's you know, I have the device of the war. You know, right.
I have
that comes from that.
My dad's family, they fled Lithuania, and then my father and my aunts and uncles were born in a refugee camp in West Germany after the war, before they emigrated to the United States.
Oh wow!
So it's like, yeah, I don't know if I ever told you that, yeah, but you know, they had basically had to flee Lithuania because the Russians. It was like Germans came in and they were driven out, and the Russians came. It was like it changed sides in the war like 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Sometimes when my grandmother would have a few drinks in her, she would start to talk about it, but it wasn't something she liked to discuss.
Right, exactly.
Because just as you said, it's like a traumatic experience. Like it's stuff that we can't even comprehend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my mother's uncle, who she grew up with, fought in World War II. He was a Norwegian who fought for the Americans. Somehow that worked. How that worked out, I'm not sure. And he never said a word about it. Yeah. He never wanted to say anything about fighting in the war. So you can imagine what kind of traumas he had. You know, these like deep things where you can't even talk about it. So I didn't fully realize like that my mother too is or her generation. Our parents' generation is we're a post-war generation, and we are too, and of course our children are as well. But you know, who knows what it would have been like if we lived in a world that didn't have world wars, right? Now, I'm not saying that it would have been better or worse, but we have to recognize that we are products of 2 really, really nasty wars.
Well, there is still a lot of people in this world that are currently products of it. So we are still, even though it's not in the news, we have been at war since 9/11.
Oh.
We just don't see it here. We're not touched. We almost never, I mean, nobody ever makes it here. It never gets here, other than the 1 or 2, 3, you know, things that have happened. Our land has never been penetrated with war. It's always been the other countries that have. And, you know, they're still occupied. So we're still sending troops there. I have a lot of friends who are military, and it's kind of terrible to see what comes out when they start drinking. You know, a lot of it is a lot of regret, a lot of just questioning the validity of themselves as human beings because of some of the stuff they may or may not have been ordered to do, you know? And to us, we just don't see it.
Right.
Until they either leave or they come back. We very rarely realize that there are people over there that are being raised in this atmosphere where there's gunshots right down the street, and it's normal.
Syria, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
People that grew up in like the Balkans in like the 90s when Yugoslavia broke apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I know a good friend of mine lived through the war in Serbia, so
yeah, it hasn't stopped. It definitely hasn't stopped. We've just seen a knockdown of it here,
right?
And it's ramping up again. So
and actually, to think about our own history, it really wasn't that long ago before we were at each other's throats, ripping, creating huge bloodshed right down the line, the center of the line of America. Just 100+ years ago,
150 years.
So, and imagine if that didn't happen. So that was like who knew with that we could even find our balance again after that, but we did. After we tore the country apart in Civil War.
We actually, we have a personal experience when we went to Gettysburg.
Right. Yeah. Tommy and I went to Gettysburg together one time.
It's definitely it's a creepy place. It's very
mm-hmm.
You could like this field where like hundreds of thousands of guys shot at each other, and a lot of them died.
Yeah. We have a lot of that type of stuff here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
It's all over the place, even downtown in the area that I live in.
Oh, Nashville was occupied by the Union Army at one point.
Yeah, we have haunted houses everywhere, or at least they claim haunted. I can't say I've seen anything or heard anything, but we have structures that are still standing from the war, and they're all over the place. And then Gatlinburg is south.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 hours away, and that was another major spot. So. Yeah, that's our standing history. Like, if you really think about it in the timeline of how we map humanity or even the planet, it was like yesterday it happened. And I just think, unfortunately, it's something that's embedded subconsciously into the psyche of our species.
Yes.
We're a very warlike species. And a great number of us might come out with zero warlike tendencies or not want to do it or be very vehement against it. But then there's always a situation that's brought up that kind of puts you in a position where you may have to still do it,
Right.
And we just can't ever universally kind of sit back and say, all right, we're going to stop this.
Yeah.
Well, so far. I like to think that we're kind of like humanity is teenager, slowly but surely entering adulthood. That we will come, just like you're saying, Lou. You're at your age, you look at people running around and all this craziness, and you just can't fathom it anymore. The caterpillar turns into the butterfly, so we can certainly imagine there will be a time when we're evolved enough. I can imagine that people just say, no, war, get out of here. Are you kidding me? I like life,
Yeah.
When it becomes more apparent, in terms of just people no longer seeing, because I would have to imagine that human beings only do something because they think it's more in their benefit to do it than to not do it. So I think there can come a time when human beings will be awake enough, or at least enough of us, more than 50%, a tipping point, will be awake enough to know that I'd rather actually not go to war than go to war. That's what I'm looking forward to anyway, And I think there's multiple timelines. That there's the world, there's the earth that goes to war, World War III, and there's the earth that doesn't, and there's the earth that evolves. There's many timelines we could hop onto at any point. They're all existing.
Well, I think that the prime drive in all of this that's deeply embedded is just the fact that we're never satisfied and we constantly need more. And I think through that is where everything else comes. Because we might not want power, we just want money. And if we don't just want money, we want more DVDs, we want more televisions, we want more land, we want more, whatever the case may be. And then a lot of the side effect of that turns into war. And one of it is literally us not having enough power.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I meant by before is like, you know, you may come to a point where you're like, all right, we're done. We're going to agree we're done. And then all of a sudden it's going to be another tribe of humans that will turn around and say, we can become the most powerful. And then you might have to act out of defense. And it just seems out of all of our viewable history that it was inevitable that it happened over and over again. Because somebody at some point was going to take what they felt was theirs. And, you know, I mean, look, I remain hopeful the same way I think most of the people I talk to do. You know, I don't want any of this stuff happening.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And I think at this point in American history, with the technology we have and the luxury we have and the convenience we have, it could be a really awesome life to utilize what we have and, you know, just spin the wheel. I mean, but we have to complicate things. I mean, if you could imagine how difficult basic life must have been hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need any of it. We don't need any of the problems we have right now. We certainly don't. No. I mean, it's so easy. We don't have to be farmers. Even manual labor jobs, we don't have to be completely hands-on. The amount of tools we have, the amount of things we have that just make everything so easy, you know? Like, it could be an easy life for 90% of the world if we chose that. But we have to overcomplicate things for ourselves, and we have to take that nice little luxurious part of history and just completely just inundate it in stress and speed and faster and more, and now war. And, you know, it's like we just we can't pause for a second and say, you know, let's just sit on the beach for a bit and watch the water.
Yeah, imagine that money was no issue, right? It just all of a sudden, whatever stress you associate with money, just click that button off. It's gone. Imagine that fear of like murderers and thieves and all that stuff was, you can click that button off. No more. You don't have to worry about any of that. And imagine that your own desires to outpace yourself and create a polluted world and competition, all that button's off too. You just don't have the motivation to do it anymore. So can you imagine the comfort where you didn't have to fear for your life or fear that the person next to you is going to actually take your resources? Because so like, as if, imagine human beings come to this, you know, sort of hive mind in a good way, where we all kind of symbiotically recognize that, hey, we are of the same body. Just like, you know, if I step on my foot, my hand doesn't laugh and say, ha ha ha, you hurt, foot. My hand says, shit, I got to take care of the foot because this is the same body. We recognize each person is a different part of the same human body. We just kind of know it. Like, we just get to that point.
Yeah.
And that also, we imagine we got to that point, we're so evolved that we actually know that it's better. The best way to take care of myself is to take care of my neighbor, is to help my neighbor. And we know that everyone around us, 8 billion people think that way, that they're all looking out for you. They're all looking out for me. Imagine that.
I actually have a theory on that. I think that the day we'll reach something like that, I'm dead serious. I'm not even going to make a joke right now. I think the day we might reach something like that is when we create an AI that will literally oversee everything. You know, I was having a talk with somebody the other day, and we were talking about different, you know, like, you know, my feelings about what's going on right now, and a lot of other stuff, and different government structures, you know. And the funny thing is, you know, what ruins socialism? What ruins communism? What ruins what we're in right now? It's humans.
Human greed.
Yes, because
the will to dominate.
Because you give control to a certain
jealousy.
sector of people that if they're literally not the King James version of Jesus, it's going to go corrupt and the whole thing's going to collapse. In idea, all of those ideologies can work, but it's us handing over to what we think is the closest thing to what we can trust, and then you find out you can't trust it. And then the whole thing has just gone completely sour. But if you created like an AI that lost nothing from it, gained nothing from it, didn't have the negative aspects of a human organism, that might actually be able to run us in a fashion where now that we know that we can't take it from the AI, we're not going to even fight for that aspect. And some of these governmental systems might actually work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I know it sounds a little bit like Big Brother, but I know that's not what you mean. Yeah.
Well,
if you
Big
take
Brother is a
AI
human operated.
Right. If you take AI to be purely neutral, you know, or just functional, or if you could even program it to have some sort of moral or something, and then we use our resources to do creative things and to enjoy life and to harmonize and take care of the earth and each other, and the AI just does like whatever sort of bureaucratic governmental stuff that nobody really wants to do or should do, like running traffic lights properly and bridges and whatever the heck. Yeah, I basically am beginning to become of the opinion that we don't need leaders.
No, that's our biggest problem with all of this are the leaders. Because even when you look at capitalism, and it hadn't even dawned on me, but when I was talking to somebody about it, because they told me it was the most rotten thing in the planet, and I was like, well, all of these systems turn out to be the most rotten things in the planet. If you didn't, like they say, unabashed capitalism, but if you didn't have people in office that got bought out to change laws
there's a very like innate aspect of humanity that just is like the will to power. Like human beings crave power just innately.
Yep. Now, like you can say that in any of these forms, in their purest form, if you had a neutral top, would work. They would all work, but they all fail because of the leaders.
Right.
Every time.
Mm-hmm. Right, which is the what's the word? In Buddhism, the term is the devilish nature of authority. So it's not actually that the person is evil; it's just the position itself.
Power
kind
corrupts.
It twists the human mind. Humans shouldn't be put in that position.
Power,
in other words,
yeah,
because it's just our psychology can't handle it.
The saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
I mean, even when we were talking about the band that we were in, we both kind of admitted we were corrupting ourselves and going a bit out of control until you realize I can't sustain this. I'm actually damaging myself. I'm affecting others around me. So I can only imagine. I mean, I'm not saying this speech to make a political speech and start attacking different political figures, but it's the truth. If anybody's put in that position where they can gain, and let's say they have that position for 25 years, even if for 10 years they somewhat stayed honest, you're going to corrupt. Because at some point you're going to say, this is too easy. I have too much money to gain. I have too much control to gain. If I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And eventually a human corrupts. And you can't, every system we'll create will go down until either Jesus comes back or we create an actual system that is self-operative and we give up the control for it to control us.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I mean,
yeah, I'm kind of seeing that something like that evolving. Can I jump in about Jesus for a second?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Of
course.
So do you guys know Ram Dass?
Yeah.
Ram Dass, are you familiar, Lou?
Be Here Now.
Be Here Now. His name Richard Alpert, I think is his birth name, but
yeah.
he became Ram Dass, this figure who
He was very
he was
big in
in.
like the 1960s.
Mm-hmm,
That's when his book
he
came
was
out.
a Harvard professor, and he became started getting involved with LSD and Timothy Leary, and then got in trouble, got fired, and then he went on this soul-seeking journey to India, and he found his guru, this Indian master, enlightened master, who taught people in his community. And there's a lot of great stories. But anyway, Ram Dass was like really determined that this guy is going to be Babaji. I forget his name. I don't know if you remember. This guy is going to be my guru. And this enlightened master allowed him to be his guru. But he would say, through translation, I don't think he spoke English, but he would say, all of you guys in the West, you know, you don't need me. I'm not your master. Your guru is Jesus. He's there. He everything you need in a teacher is there. And to Jews and everyone alike, he would say this: you have a guru in the West. You have a teacher. It's Jesus, and he should be your focal point. Saying not me, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about Jesus. It was just Jesus was the form that the high teaching could come through in the Western mind. That's it. That a different culture would have another form, and
it's the archetype.
Yeah, it was the archetype that Western mind could get, could understand and relate to. And he said that you guys can that's your teacher, and you don't have to need me, but people are attached to certain forms that they prefer. But interesting to think of, that everything you need is right there. Like I pass Jesus statues, I always stop and think about it, because I do feel that Jesus's teachings, me becoming Buddhist was my way of actually following Jesus and the depth of my heart, because I felt like one of the things I had to do was die to my former self, and part of my former self was being a Catholic, and that I would have to move beyond that.
It kind of works the same way for like becoming a pagan. Like, okay, one of the archetypes that we have is like the dying god. The corn is cut down or the wheat is cut, like for sacrifice, but for a feast, or animals hunted for to like feed the tribe. So yeah, it's a pattern that, like, again, it exists in human nature. Yeah. You guys had a question about me recommending certain books.
Sorry, yeah. So yeah, do you have any 3 inspiring books or films that you'd like to recommend?
One is Power of Myth. The Power of Myth. It was a dialogue between Joseph Campbell and Bill Moyers, who was like a really famous journalist, where like he sort of explicates a lot of his ideas about mythology. Talks a lot about like what is the role of Jesus Christ in Western culture, like the virgin birth, and so that's one. If you want to get into like Joseph Campbell, that's a good starting point. Another one is a gentleman named Thomas More. He was a writer that was really popular, I think, in like the 80s and 90s, and he had a really interesting career. He was went to seminary school, was good. He joined a Catholic order as a child, went to seminary school, was going to be initiated ordained as a priest, didn't go through the ordination, then became a therapist, and then he wrote like a lot of, like, I guess, self-help works. And then one is called Care of the Soul, which is like, it talks a lot about like, stuff that we've been discussing about how the archetypes like live and speak within us. And another one he has is called Dark Nights of the Soul, which is really good if you're going through like a really difficult, like tough, like, it's called Dark Nights of the Soul, Navigating Life's Ordeals. And then the last book I would mention is probably one of my favorite texts. It's called The Mists of Avalon, which is like it's the feminist retelling of the Arthurian legend. So it's like the story of King Arthur through the women in his life, and it gets into a lot of like, okay, the older faith, the way of the goddess and the land, and then the newer religion like Christianity, and then like the differing aspects and abilities and powers that like men and women have. Like, there's a lot of gender issues that come up in the book. it's told through some aspects of the story have that tell pieces about like Western occultism, like Western ritual magic. The woman who wrote the book was kind of well versed in that stuff, and she cloaks like the Arthurian stories like in that framework. Yeah, those are 3 works I would recommend.
How do you?
And it's like you want to understand me.
How do you feel about 50 Shades of Grey?
All right. I think we're gonna get into BDSM and what I think I haven't read the book, but from what I understand from people who have like been in that world and how they see the power dynamics portrayed in that tale, it's kind of like it's done in a sort of a toxic framework. It's kind of I mean it's modern publishing kind of capitalizing on like the forbidden in a certain sense. Because the book did do very well.
I was actually just breaking your chops.
Okay.
It wasn't really.
So like BDSM, sadomasochism.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't know what that is, John?
Yeah.
No.
Oh boy. All right, I'll send it to you. I'll send you a PDF.
So he has it. So
no.
Who's reading it?
I'm not too. I know people who had it. I mean, I could get it for you. That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thank you.
No, the point I was making, that the way like BDSM is like portrayed in that book, it's like very problematic there for people that are actually in that community, like what the whole life philosophy is about. That's kind of what I've heard secondhand. That's all I can say.
That's what any pop culture tends to do. I mean, what do you think the Jersey Shore did to my family?
So, any concluding thoughts?
Yeah.
From either one
right. So, well, one more question is just: do you have any plans in the upcoming several months that you want to share?
I have a couple really intense projects in my professional life dealing with talking about technology trend. One thing we do at my job is we talk about emerging technology trends and how they could influence like investments and deal making in the technology community. And then the other one is we have to write stories about what's going to happen with the markets and the election. And then on the more personal side, I have a date on our other program at some point in the future.
Right.
In coming weeks, I suppose.
On the cafe.
Yeah.
I'm ready right after this.
On the Camarilla Cafe.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you both for having me. Thank you all for our listeners out in the ether.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Tommy, for joining. Thank you, Lou, for letting us ride on your horse.
And my pleasure.
And for being a co-host. Yeah, I guess we all need to get a little rest. I'm not sure what Lou's going to be doing, but Tommy and I probably going to close our eyes pretty soon in our separate bedrooms.
No. Don't back out now.
We're not doing a sleepover tonight.
We know. Me and the audience, that is. We know.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone out there listening. Until next time, take care and keep asking good questions to get meaningful answers.
Adios.